Ho ho ho, Merry Christmas to all. You guys ever shoot a 45-minute video just to realize that the whole thing was out of focus, even though you checked the focus beforehand and it was fine, but still somehow it was out of focus? Anyway, here we are, end of the year, so it's time to look back at all the new releases from 2021 that I heard, because obviously I don't listen to every band ever. So these are the albums I heard this year, so we will be looking at all of them again to see which one reigns supreme. So let's get right into it with the bad albums. So yeah, Disorder Assembly coming in last place because it's really not good. If you don't know what it is, it's an 8-piece ensemble, most notably Dan Briggs of Between the Bear and Me, one of his million side bands. This is the newest one, and it's almost the worst one. Everything I said about it in my video on them still remains true. How tracks 1 and 3 are completely worthless because it's just them dicking around and doing jazz band warm-up noises for about a half hour. And then tracks 2 and 4 have some decent parts, but only like 5 minutes of actual music. And there's 8 of them in this band. And are you telling me not one of them heard this back and thought, wow, maybe we should actually try to make real music instead of just making a bunch of stupid noises and slapping that on a vinyl? Honestly, I'm just glad that I do not have to listen to this shitty album again. So yes, with the quest. They should have made it their quest to write a better album instead of the same boring ass fucking tempos over and over again, and all the songs sounding the exact same. Minus the Ice Bridge. Ice Bridge still really slays. Everything else, not. Even if there's occasionally like a highlight, like Music to My Ears or parts of Living Island, it's not enough to save this complete drag of an album. John Mayer's Sob Rock is along the exact same lines as The Quest. The only song I like in it is New Light. Everything else is boring shit. However, he has the edge over The Quest because A Living Island is not my favorite Yes song, but New Light is my favorite John Mayer song. So it gives it that slight bump up ahead of The Quest, but both the albums are pretty equally bad, to be honest. Alright, now that we got all the trash out of the way, let's get into some good stuff. Or, I guess, some okay stuff. First up is Outrun the Sunlight with A Vast Field of Silence. If you're unfamiliar, they're a Chicago post-rock band that really, I don't know why I can't get down with them. Everything about them is good. Like, they're all really good musicians, and they write decent songs. But for some reason, I've tried 3 times to get into this band, and I just can't. Why? Who knows? I'm going to make that one of my wishes this year. Hey Santa, can you explain to me why the hell I don't like Outrun the Sunlight? It's a fine album that's significantly stronger than the other 3, but I just can't get into them. On to another rare specimen of a band, Origami Angel with Gami Gang. And how do I describe these guys? It's basically if pop punk, if they were actually good at their instruments. Like, the vocals are just the only thing holding me back on this band. But like, the guitar and the drumming absolutely slays. There's occasionally some heavy riffs. There's dissonant riffs all over this album. And also a bunch of really entertaining samples. Like, we got Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle in there. We got Terry Tate, Office linebacker, which I haven't thought about in years. It's basically along the same lines as Dream Theater, where I really don't like the vocals, but the instruments are really good, and they're good enough to make me look past the vocals. However, this guy is way better than Labrie, to be honest. And the first album I actually own, Puzzle, finally came in, and man, this is why physical media is way cooler, because you can't get this shit on digital. No siree, no you cannot. So, it's fine. It's an interesting project based on an interesting time, but it is just mostly ambient stuff and very sporadic instruments. You know, it doesn't resonate with me as much as his other albums, obviously, but for what it is, it's still a pretty neat project. And I also did see the film that goes along with it, which kind of is like half Puzzle, half Snuggles. And it's just Dev in his apartment with some animated stuff, which is pretty neat. It's just, I don't know, it's just a cool specimen. It's a cool piece of art that came from a not so cool time. Explosions in the Sky, Big Bend, a original soundtrack for public television. I was planning on doing a video on these guys when this came out, but honestly, this is so drastically different from their other stuff that I decided to skip it, because it's a soundtrack, so obviously they're not going to be putting 9-minute long instrumental pieces in their show about birds and bears. But what we have here is just a bunch of mini explosion songs. Like, they all go through the same motions of, like, it starts clean and then it escalates and then it climaxes in this big finale, you know, only in like 2-minute increments. And Nightfall is my easy highlight on this album. It's just that the songs are so short that, like, by the time I get into them, they end. So yeah, here we go again with The Future Bites, everyone's favorite album by Steven Wilson. I still like it. I don't care. A lot of tracks really slay on it still. Eminent Sleaze still fucking sucks. Every time I hear that song, I like it less and less. But with Self, King Ghost, Man of the People, Personal Shopper, and Follower, I'm still jamming this pretty occasionally. It's still a pretty good album, despite no one agreeing with me on this. But, frankly, I don't really give a shit. Alright, so Soen with Imperial. A band I have not talked about yet, but I don't know when the new album is going to be, because they just put one out. But whenever it drops, we'll get to them. But for now, it's a pretty solid album. Like, I don't love any particular song on it, but I can easily see myself going back to this album every once in a while. Because you have the chorus in Lumerian, which I really like. Antagonist is pretty solid. I don't have much to say on it because I'm pretty new to this band, which is true for a lot of bands on this list. I just think it's probably the first all the way through consistent album. Alright, we have Liquid Tension Experiment 3, which I don't want to use the word disappointing because I just don't want to say that, but like, honestly, all these guys put out better albums this year, and it's just a lot of material. Like the studio version, you have Hypersonic and Beating the Odds, which I really like those two songs. Key to the Imagination is pretty solid, but honestly, I think the second disc is even stronger, and it's all improv, especially Yamon. I think that's my favorite song on the album. But yeah, it was cool to hear these guys back together again. But I don't know, just something about the studio version that's just kind of okay. And then you have all the bonus stuff, which is arguably better than the actual studio version. Okay, moving right along into Mastodon Hush and Grim, which I finally own after they sent me a new one, and then I found it at FYE for like $13, and I paid like $27 on the website. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, as I mentioned before, Disc 1, really strong. All 3 singles totally slay. Sickle and Peace has their best chorus they've ever written. And then Pain with an Anchor is a really, really good album intro. It's just Disc 2 where there's not really any song that I like nearly as much as Disc 1. And that's just kind of the same issue I have with LTE 3, where it's like, I like one disc, but the second disc is just kind of okay. But honestly, just Sickle and Peace is such a cool song. I just can't get over how much I love that chorus. And then, you know, Pushing the Tides, this YYZ sounding ass song. Okay album, I just wish I liked it more. I wish I liked Disc 2 more, but what we got is still pretty solid. Transatlantic, The Absolute Universe, which is a pretty interesting project since there's like an extended version and then in a shorter version, but they're called something different. I just listened to the shorter one because you see all these albums I have to get through, but I will be sure to probably go back to the extended version for whenever I talk about this band again. Who knows? Like I said, who knows when they're going to drop a new album, but when they do, I'm going to get on this. But yeah, this album, I didn't think it was going to be this high, considering the fact that I don't really listen to this band really at all. Like, I've heard them once, and this album like twice, and it's just a really upbeat record that's just a hefty chunk of material, and all that material is really good. This is Portnoy's better album of the year versus LTE 3, and we'll get to the other two guys soon. Gojira's Fortitude is still pretty kick-ass. Like, the chant and trails I don't really like at all. And then you have Newfound, which I think is kind of okay. But man, every other song, from the opening of Born for One Thing to the insanity that is Grind, there's a lot of really, really chunky, heavy material that when I fucking see people saying, oh, Magma and Fortitude aren't Gojira, like, yeah, really, motherfucker? What does that say? Oh, look, it says Gojira. Then I guess it's Gojira. This is just a general rant of whenever people say that kind of shit, where this album isn't this band. Says fucking who? It's the same people making it. It's the same band name. Just because you don't like it doesn't make it not that band. Yeah, Fortitude isn't Gojira because it's different from their other albums. Because every album has to fucking sound the exact same. Yes, every band should be AC/DC. Wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, I'm done with that fucking rant. Let's move on into our top 5 albums of the year. Medicine at Midnight, More Fire. That's funny because the first track is Making a Fire, and that's exactly what they did with this album. I mean, Shame is pretty not great, which I skip that song like every time I listen to this album. But everything else, No Son of Mine, easily the most rockin' song on this album. Love Dies Young is such a upbeat, great finale. Chasing Birds, beautiful as hell. You got like Cloud Spotter with that catchy ass verse riff. Man, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but every time I hear this album, I just always have such a great time with it. Ho ho ho! Senjutsu, one of the best Iron Maiden albums out there, along with Book of Souls. And you know, with pretty much every other double disc album that I've talked about on this video, I mentioned how one disc is pretty weak compared to the other one. And while disc 1 is not weak, it's pretty good. You know, you have Stratego and Writing on the Wall, and then Days of Future Past, which are pretty cool. Disc 2, with The Parchment, Death of the Celts, and Hell on Earth, which is one of their top 5 songs ever. Those 3 songs are where Senjutsu really finds its footing and cementing itself as one of Iron Maiden's best. So all you motherfuckers out there who say there hasn't been a good album since Brave New World, you're all high, because this album is pretty goddamn kick-ass. And wow, I cannot believe that a Dream Theater album would make my top 3 list of anything. Anything at all. I mean, despite the fact that Sleeping Giant I could easily do without completely, and Alien just being kind of whatever, the other 4 songs are so damn good that I cannot believe how much I actually enjoyed this album. It's Labrie's best, it's Mangini's best, and despite the fact that there's a lot of boring-ass chugging riffs on this album, you have Rudess and Mangini doing something far more interesting under them that pretty much saves it. So, yes, this is the better Petrucci and Rudess album from this year. And I don't know if Tony Levin did anything this year, but if he did, it's probably better than LTE3. But yeah, Answering the Call, super groovy. Transcending Time is just such a nice, fun little song. Awaken the Master with that H string and that fucking amazing chorus, post-chorus, and the whole last half of the title track. Like I said, easily, I couldn't give a shit about like the last 4 albums, but this one's all right. All right, top 2 time. I debated on them a lot, but I think I can put Colors 2 in the number 2 spot. Double Helix outdoes Foamborn B at its own game. Human as Hell tries to outdo White Walls, but I don't think it hits quite that height. Blake Richards' growls and the bossa nova part in Revolution in Limbo, really damn sweet. Fix the Error is still one of the funnest songs I ever heard him do. Prehistory is still amazing with its memery, and Bad Habits has a lot of singable parts, and despite Human as Hell not quite being as good as White Walls, that's a scary track with all those blast beats, and just it's really, really brutal. It's a great album that's just going to take a long time to get used to, because I still haven't even gotten used to like Coma Ecliptic and Automata. There's still a lot of parts in those albums that I always forget about. It's just a lot. It's 80 minutes of just ludicrousy. It's really good. But man, I'm sorry. Number one. Like, are you even surprised at what it is? Within the Court of the Dragon by Trivium. Sorry, man. They're probably my favorite band ever, and when your favorite band ever drops the heaviest album they've ever done, goddamn right it's going at number 1. Super brutal. From the moment I heard that title track single, I knew this album was going to be crazy. And it sure as hell is crazy. The only songs are Fall Into Your Hands and From Dawn to Decadence that I'm not super on board with. But the last half of Fall Into Your Hands I really like. And you know, the same thing happened on the last album with Sickness Unto You, where I only liked the last half. But eventually, I started to really like the first half, and then it became one of my favorite songs in the album. So hopefully down the line, Fall Into Your Hands has that same effect. But for now, it's about the title track, the Phalanx, from Like a Sword Over Damocles, from Crisis of Revelation, and motherfucking Shadow of the Abattoir. One of the best songs they've ever done. Absolutely fire of an album. And the crazy thing about all these albums are, this is my favorite album of the year, but it's still only my 4th favorite Trivium album. Colors 2, 4th favorite BT Band album. Senjutsu, I think, is like the 4th Iron Maiden album. So, like, nothing this year has been my all-time favorite of any of these bands, or, like, even close. But, man, we had a lot of good stuff this year. So be sure to let me know what your favorite albums of the year were. Bonus points if I did not talk about them, because I can't hear every album in existence. And I'm glad, because if I did, I'd have like a 70 album list to do. But anyway, my camera battery's about to die because I didn't charge it, because I fucking shot this video yesterday and the stupid thing was out of focus. And if it's out of focus now, Christmas is canceled. But anyway, I will see you all next year with Jethro Tull, maybe ELP before then, but there's like 20 albums I got to get through, so we'll see. If I don't see you before Jethro Tull, then ELP is definitely after them. But again, Merry Christmas to all. Happy New Year, and eat lots of cookies, because they're good as hell.